Hello, hi. I'm Dorte Rosen. I'm a little bit later than I was planning to be. Having some technical trouble here. And today I'm going to talk to you, though, about bezels, and bezel being how a gem is fit in a ring, essentially. And I see Shonda is here. She had this question for me, so I'm going to try to address it today. And I'm going to try something different, which is why I was having a little trouble. I'm hoping this will work. So, so bezel is the jacket that holds a gem. And I should say first that there are, of course, a number of different ways how gems can be held in a piece of jewelry. And obviously there are prong settings, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's either 3 or more basically sticks that stick up that hold a gem. And this was very trendy for a very long time. Still is in the more kind of ordinary jewelry, I want to say. So those are prong settings. And so they have 3 or more prongs, and if you have it even more pointy, taller, then that's called a Tiffany style prong setting, and that was also really trendy for a while. And so when I'm sorry, that's like somebody knocking at the door. It's not going to happen right now. So these really tall settings are a real problem because they get stuck on things all the time, and they protrude. You can't wear a glove, especially nowadays. A lot of them would puncture gloves. The other problem with prong settings, of course, is that they tend to they can become loose. They wear down, and they even can be. They need to be re-tipped, which means that the tip of it needs to be replaced, or the whole thing needs to be redone. If you have a prong setting, do check it regularly. Have it checked. Have your goldsmith check your prong settings. It's really important so you don't lose your gems. They can also snag, and the other thing is, of course, when the girdle of the gem is exposed, so it can hit places and damage the stone much more easily. There are a bunch of other types of settings too, but I'm not going to get into that right now. You know, there's like channel sets and tension sets and all kinds of things. You may have noticed that the main settings I like doing are full bezel sets. And the reason I like that is, first of all, they really are the most contemporary look, especially if you do them in a certain way, which I'll talk about in a minute. I forgot to bring my samples. Yikes. Oh well. I'll just tell you, and then you can look on my website later. The way a bezel set works is essentially it's a jacket all around the gem. And so Shonda's question had been, how do I figure out that exact fit? So I'm going to try something new here. Let's see if it works. I'm going to try to get some light on here, first of all. Oops. And see if I can make this work. Okay, so hang on. Work with me here. There you go. I'm right at my workbench here. Here's all my tools. And okay, there we go. So I set out a few things. Oops. How am I going to start? So the first thing I need to figure out is the size of the gem. And the way I do that is I use this trusted tool, my gauge, and I would take a gem like these. These are spinels. Actually, let's use something different for a change. Let's use this tourmaline. It's a little tricky for me to do all these things around my phone, which is what's recording. I put this upside down in here. Let's see if I can zoom in a little. So my gem is in there, and it's very precisely measured. And I'm not going to show you this right now, but I would be measuring this. I would keep changing the direction of the gem to make sure that I wasn't because they're not always totally round, right? So this gem is now upside down, and I can look at the gauge, and I can see that this is, so this tells me it's 5 millimeters, 0.9 and change. So it's a little over 5.9 millimeters. This direction, I would then measure it a bunch of other directions as well. This is a green tourmaline. But that's what gives me that size, and it tells me the size of the gem. And just going to put this guy back in here. Oops. Okay. Ooh. It's so hard to work around the camera. So then you already see these little prepared bezels here. So then basically what I do is I use a tubing, and I just have silver here for an example for you. So then I need to figure out with this tubing, that's too close, okay. Well, the tubing, you can see this one, I'm going to make it a little taller. This is quite thick. I would never have this amount of gold tubing kicking around. That would be crazy. Come on, focus. Not focusing. So yeah, there you go, a little better. You can see that this wall is quite thick. I like really, really thick bezels. That's what I prefer. It's a very contemporary look. Just kicking myself that I didn't bring one to show you. But in any case, so I would find a tubing in gold that would be wider than my gem, but the inside is slightly smaller than my gem. And I will show you in a minute why that is. So here, I think it might be this one. And then I use what's called a setting burr. And I would drill a seat in here. You see how this is going to remove some of the, oh, this one's a little too small actually. So I need one bigger than this because this is too small. This wouldn't create a seat. Let me show you what it means to create a seat. I got some photos ready for you. This is the idea of this bit that I was showing you, my setting burr, creating a seat in there, in the tubing. And this has to be, so in this case, this burr may be exactly the size of the gem, but with all the naturally cut, hand-cut gems that I have, highly unlikely that that's going to be, that I'm going to have a burr, even though I have a whole bunch of them and I have several more sets of these. It's highly unlikely that I would find exactly the exact right size. So oftentimes I have to move it around a little bit, or if the gem isn't exactly round, I have to maneuver it a little bit to get that hole to be exactly the right size. Another way to illustrate that is, let's see, here. I found this nice illustration. So here you can see like a cross section. So once that is cut out, then there's a happy home for that gem, where that gem can rest. You can see where the red arrow is. The gem can rest there, and the little bits on the left and right that are still sticking up is what's going to be pushed over the gem by way of my setting tool, so that I can then secure the gem in place. But so the cut step is what you see there. And I'm gonna stop sharing. And I'm gonna show you what that looks like. So this is a very crudely cut because it's just a sample. So you can see the little ridges from the setting burr. Ideally you don't have those, but this is just, I made it kind of bigger to illustrate, to show you. You see how there's that step inside, just like we just had in the illustration. So it's thicker, the metal is thicker below and thinner at the top. And the gem would sit right in there think I have one that fits this one. And then these edges would be pushed over the edge. Now sometimes I don't have the right burr or tubing, and so then sometimes what I do instead is what's illustrated here. So instead of cutting a seat with a burr, the other option is, can you see this is the question. The other option is to insert a tiny ring of wire. So this is called, that's another way of creating a seat, is by having just not cutting it out, but instead adding the seat below. I hope you can see that. So it's just a tiny little ring, such as, again, I'm doing this all a little bigger, so such as this one, that is fitted inside the tube, and then the gem can rest on there. And sometimes you need to use a graver and cut the inside of the bezel, whether it doesn't matter which one it is, and cut it out to make it more smooth, or also to like, not all gems are cut equally on all sides because they're cut by human beings. So this is one of the things I look at when I buy a gem. How well is it cut? Is it symmetrical on all sides? So this is a very crudely done. This was an apprentice setting here. You can see from the bottom, this is quite thick. And then from the top, this has already been set, so the metal has been pushed over from the sides to cover the gem and hold it in place. And then sometimes I do them, I like doing them a little bit like this. Oops, no, that's the wrong thing. You can't see it so well, but basically tapered. And the way to taper the bezel is to make it from being like a straight tubing like this, parallel, to going like this. And I think I have an illustration in here, another one. There you can see it maybe a little bit better. You can see how that gem is held in place there. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that illustrates it. And here it almost looks like the culet, like the tip of the gem at the bottom is touching something. It's always open at the bottom. Reason being that you have to be able to push out that gem if you need it. So there are two, if you need to get it out. So there are two ways of making these kinds of shapes. One of them is basically by creating a geometric shape that will then fold into or roll into that right kind of shape. You can see at the top here I have a straight bezel, full bezel. Bottom left is a tapered bezel, and then if it gets much more complicated if that gem has a shape such as being a square like a princess cut, or having like hexagonal, or being a gem that is perhaps a like an emerald cut or something. It can get really complicated, and this is another way to be able to I showed this last time. This is actually the oval one, which is not an ideal sample because it's the ovals almost never work. So even if this way, this thing is very heavy. So these ovals are also tapered, and I could be making a straight bezel, and then this is like a male female. This is called a bezel block. So you then put the bezel in between these two, male and female, and you can flare out that bezel to make it tapered. So that's a bezel block, and that's how that works. Again, if the this is a lot more complicated. If the bezel if the gem is not round, gets a lot more complicated. Another complicated one. So if you can imagine, for a square bezel, for example, I showed last week the scoring tool to score the edges of a like if I need to make a box for a square bezel, for a square gem, for example, you need to score or file the corners so that otherwise it would bulge at the corner. You can imagine if it's a straight piece of metal and you're trying to fold it up, it would bulge right here where you fold it. So you need to remove metal there. It's all very complicated. And then in the kind of like announcement for this one, you would this live, you would have seen there was a what's called a trillion cut. So it's a triangular shape that's a little bit rounded on each side, and that creates to make that is really it's better to just you can fold one edge, and then the third side you're gonna wanna make separately, and then solder a whole. You have to create a whole structure to hold it. It's like building an entire house, an entire separate house. And so if we have, I'll go down again, let's see, because I want to show you, this is my ceiling. So if you have gems such as this one, these are again some, I showed these before actually because I'm very fond of them. These beautiful spinels, I'm going to leave them in the box. I don't want to get into any more trouble than I am in already. Even the ovals can be, they're not usually the same on both sides, and these cushion cuts can be tricky, and then you have to really pay attention. You have to measure precisely and do the math of, even with the round ones, you have to do the math of where you need to make those scores or filing areas, and then even with a round one, you really need to think about where is your, what's the circumference? And there's math having to do with pi to figure all that out. And then I wanted to show you what that looks like. So then, of course, this gem situation is going to have to go find a place in a ring. So this is one where this is a one for the ring. And it's got a bezel in it. So this bezel is soldered in place. So in order to do that, I first got rid of a bunch of metal here on the left and right. How can I point at this? Like here, it's called file to contour. It's file to contour over here. It's file to contour over here, so that bezel has a real little home where it can sit in. You can see the bezels, these full bezels take a lot of metal because they are so tall. They need to be as tall as the gem and a little taller to protect it. And this one needs to have a seat cut yet. But that would be the, is that right? I can't actually see. Yes, it doesn't have a seat cut yet. That's again quite a bit of work to actually get that in there, especially with this design. Gotta say, that's one of the more challenging things about this particular design is how to get that, how to fit these bezels in there and not because metal likes to move when you apply heat to it. So that's that. And then this bezel, of course, I don't always use tubing, and in fact for this one, if you look closely, you'll see that it is actually soldered somewhere. You can see it on the inside. This was made from a sheet of metal, so then this is where you do the math of the pi and all that stuff. So Shonda, I hope that explains. Oh, I'm getting undressed by mistake. Shonda, I hope that explains enough for you how that works. I hope I covered all the bases. We then get into using a setting tool to push those edges over, and that happens very carefully. It's like this is one of the most I didn't even talk about. I'll talk about that another day, because when you have gems with corners, it becomes very you have to be extremely careful that those corners don't chip. So you have to take extra precautions for that. For anything with a point, I'm just finishing a ring for as the collector, and it has a beautiful pear-shaped spinel, and the tip of a pear shape, you want to be just so careful, you have to create kind of extra room. And then the pear shape's really like rocking. Yeah, but when you set a stone, you then use the setting tool and basically hit it at the 4 directions, north, east, south, west. And that's how you start tacking it into place, continuously checking to make sure that it's not rocking. Because if you hit it a little bit too much on one side, that stone's going to sit in there crooked. And you have to take it back out if that's what's happening, and then start over. So stone setting, a lot of it is set up and doing it all properly right from the get-go. Yeah, thanks for the question, Shonda. I really appreciate that. And if anybody else has any questions, do let me know. I did receive one about, how to choose the gem for the ring. That's a little bit more personal, but I'll try to address it in a live, and otherwise I'll send you an email, Jane. Okay. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm sorry I was a couple of hours late, and then a couple of minutes on top of the couple of hours. I think next week I'll be back at noon. I'll let you know in the graphic. Take good care. Have a good Sunday. Bye.